Hello, my name is Gage Hawes, and today I will be covering over the basics of playing linebacker. This includes the positions of different linebackers, how they're aligned, and their specific responsibilities, and using film and diagrams to demonstrate these different concepts. To begin, the edge position is the most versatile of the linebacker positions. This is because they are also considered a defensive lineman position, so they're kind of the in-between between linebacker and defensive line. Edge rushers exclusively stay on the line of scrimmage and have strong pass rushing responsibility. However, they can also be flexed into coverage depending on the scheme. Closely related to the edge position is an outside linebacker. Outside linebackers can play either on the line of scrimmage, like edge rushers do, or off the ball, and typically have less blitzes than an edge rusher and more coverage responsibility to combat that. Moving inwards, we get inside or middle linebackers. These players spend most of their time off the ball but can roll onto the line of scrimmage. Middle linebackers have a mix of run and coverage responsibilities and are generally responsible for relaying play calls, making them essentially the quarterback of the defense. These positions are generally tagged with a name when illustrating plays. We have Will, Mike, Sam, and Jack. Will represents the weak side linebacker, Mike represents the middle linebacker or the player responsible for play calls, Sam represents the strong side linebacker, and Jack is a term used for a fourth linebacker, which is generally the strong side offensive linebacker or edge rusher. Here is an example of a 4-3 defense from the Seattle Seahawks. Since a 4-3 defense means 3 linebackers, we will only need Will, Mike, and Sam. These 3 players are the linebackers as they're the only ones that are off the line of scrimmage and playing within the box. The strength of the offense's run game is to the right. This means that the right linebacker, or in this case a safety playing as a linebacker, is the Sam. The interior linebacker would be labeled Mike as he's in the middle, and the remaining linebacker to the weak side of the offense's rush game is considered the Will. Here's an example of a 3-4 defense from the Pittsburgh Steelers. This means that we will need all 4 terms of Will, Mike, Sam, and Jack. The strength of the offense's run game is to the left. And since these are the 2 edge rushers, and this one's to the left, we can name him Jack and the other one Will. These are the 2 interior linebackers. Since this one's on the strong side, we can label him Sam, and the other one can be labeled Mike. Do note, some teams do not switch Mike and Sam dependent on the specific run scheme and keep it tagged to a specific player, particularly keeping the play caller as the Mike and the other inside linebacker or outside linebacker as Sam. Here's one last example out of a 4-2-5 or nickel defense. This particular defense has 2 linebackers, but includes a nickel or apex defender. The Mike linebacker would be the player that borders the nickel or apex defender, which in this case is the player down here or to the right of the linebackers. This means that this linebacker would be considered the Mike and the other to be the Will. Next, I'll describe the system we use to describe linebacker alignments, which is slightly different than the system we use to describe the defensive line alignments, and we can also start going over the phrases we use to describe when a linebacker is on the ball or off the ball on a given play. There are 2 terms to describe a player who's a linebacker, which is on ball or off ball. Off ball just means that he is not actively on the line of scrimmage, while on ball means that he is actively on the line of scrimmage when a play begins. Generally, off-ball players follow a numerical system to dictate their alignment, which is not unlike the defensive line. This system starts at 0-0 over the center, then moves to 10 over the A-gap, 20 over the guard, and expands outwards from there. Evens generally mean over an offensive lineman, and odds represent over a gap. Now that we know how the linebacker is positioned in relation to the offensive line, we can start learning the tags of describing if they're on or off the ball for any given linebacker position. The most basic term is over, which describes a defense where the linebackers are over the defensive linemen or are considered all off the ball. In this example, we can clearly see all the linebackers off the line of scrimmage. A different common alignment is mug, best demonstrated with the usage of double mug, which is in a 4-2-5 or 2-4-5 defense when both the linebackers on the inside line up over the A-gaps in order to mug the center. There are different terms that a defense can use to describe an outside linebacker rolling onto the line of scrimmage. Solid for Sam and walk for weak is a really popular one, but other teams can use terms like walking up to describe the same action. These different terms help describe where a linebacker specifically is, and us utilizing these different alignments helps mask our defensive coverage and our defensive play call, as well as hiding what the specific responsibility of a given player is, or vice versa, we can help the player out with their specific responsibility. Like if a player is blitzing, we can put them up on the line of scrimmage to decrease the amount of distance between them and the quarterback, or we can have him off the ball to help mask the fact that he's blitzing. Now that we have an understanding for where a linebacker is, we can now discuss what a player does on a play. The easiest to explain is blitzing, which is when a blitzer rushes a specific gap without regard for a coverage responsibility. Here we're tracking number 54 Levante David for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As the play starts to develop, he fills in his gap and then pursues the back and ultimately makes the play. On this play, we're going to follow linebacker number 53, Zach Bond of the Philadelphia Eagles. As the ball is snapped, he identifies that it's a rush. Then he steps up and fills his gap and ultimately makes the play on the running back. Here's a new example. On this play, we're going to follow number 32 of the Kansas City Chiefs, Nick Bolton. First, he identifies that it's a pass, and then he understands that he's going into his coverage assignment, which is in this case man coverage against the running back. As he follows him, and as the ball is released, he ultimately switches up and gets an INT off of this play. Linebackers have to keep track of a variety of different coverages and responsibilities for their position. This can be tricky, and it means that each linebacker has to be really smart in order to keep track of all this information. But not only do they have to be smart, they have to be fast enough to keep up with receivers and tight ends in coverage. And they also have to be aggressive enough or outright strong enough to participate in the trenches and stop any runs or help themselves out when blitzing. Let's review. Linebackers include edge rushers, outside linebackers, and inside or middle linebackers. Each position has a variety of different responsibilities, ranging from blitzing or rushing the pocket, and coverage, if not a mix of the two components. They are assigned either on the ball or off the ball, generally used with a numeric system or a verbal tag to describe which of the two they're at. In future installments, I will start covering the responsibilities of defensive backs, which includes nickel backs, dime backs, cornerbacks, and the different safeties we have. And then later on start talking about the different coverages or defensive play calls a defense can have. Thank you for watching.